There's a strange kind of silence that comes right after you get what you always wanted. It happens the moment the applause fades, the phone stops buzzing, or the achievement finally lands in your hands. For a second, you expect peace, that gentle exhale you've been waiting for through months or even years of chasing. But instead, there's nothing, a dull, quiet emptiness that feels heavier than before. We rarely talk about that feeling because it doesn't fit the story we're told. The story says, work harder, reach higher, win more, and you'll be happy. It's printed on billboards, whispered by teachers, echoed by influencers. But no matter how much we gain, we always seem to circle back to the same invisible ache, a restlessness that sits somewhere between the chest and the mind, reminding us that something is still missing, even when everything looks perfect from the outside. Why is that? Why do we spend our entire lives trying to fill a void that refuses to stay full? Why does nothing ever feel enough? To answer that, we have to start where all stories of the human condition begin, inside the brain. The human brain is a masterpiece of contradiction. It evolved to keep us alive, not to keep us content. Buried deep within it lies a small chemical messenger called dopamine. Most people think dopamine gives pleasure, but it doesn't. It gives pursuit. It rewards anticipation, not satisfaction. Imagine an ancient hunter on the plains. If he felt complete after his first successful hunt, he'd stop searching for food. He'd die. The ones who kept hungering, who never felt enough, those were the ones who survived, reproduced, and passed that wiring on to us. You and I are descendants of the restless. Thousands of years later, we still carry that same biological itch. But instead of chasing mammoths or shelter, we chase promotions, followers, and validation. Our environment changed, our instincts didn't. Each goal we reach gives us a spark, a small jolt of dopamine that says, you did it. But that spark fades almost instantly. The brain resets, quietly whispering, what's next? It's not that success is meaningless, it's that success was never designed to satisfy. It was designed to keep us moving. This is what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill, a perfect image for how our lives feel. You run faster and faster just to stay in the same emotional place. The moment you stop running, you feel the belt sliding beneath your feet, threatening to throw you backward into the emptiness you've been running from. It's a cruel kind of genius, a mind built to survive scarcity, trapped in an age of abundance. We have food, shelter, technology, safety, everything our ancestors dreamed of. And yet anxiety, depression, and burnout are at record highs. We're overstimulated, overconnected, and underfulfilled. Why? Because dopamine is infinite, but satisfaction is finite. Every click, every notification, every promise of more feeds the ancient circuitry that says keep going. But it never tells us when to stop. There's a scene I often imagine, a man standing in a room filled with trophies, each one representing something he thought would make him whole. He looks around, but none of them glow anymore. They're just metal and dust. He built a life that sparkles from the outside but echoes on the inside. That echo is what we call emptiness. Modern culture makes this worse by glorifying motion and mistaking it for meaning. We're told that if we're not improving, we're failing. If we're not posting, we're invisible. If we're not chasing, we're lost. But constant striving doesn't bring depth. It erases it. You can't plant roots while sprinting. Somewhere between ambition and addiction, we lost the ability to simply be. We measure our worth in metrics, followers, salary, weight, grades. And when those numbers rise, the bar rises with them. The finish line moves forward again and again until we forget what we were even running toward. That's the tragedy of the modern mind. We've mistaken movement for meaning and pleasure for peace. But peace is not something you chase, it's something you allow. The emptiness we fear isn't a flaw, it's a message. It's the brain's way of saying, you're playing the wrong game. Because the pursuit of more was never meant to make us happy. It was meant to keep us alive. Think about how you felt the last time you finally bought something you wanted for months. A phone, a car, maybe a piece of tech. For the first few days, it was exciting. You looked at it with admiration and the weight of reward. But a week later, it was just another object in your hand. That drop in satisfaction isn't failure. It's biology. Your mind simply moved the goalpost forward. Now multiply that by every area of life. love, success, appearance, knowledge. We live in a loop where desire feeds achievement and achievement feeds new desire. It feels endless because for the brain, it is. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't out-achieve emptiness. You can only understand it. Emptiness isn't the hole in your life. It's the space where meaning is supposed to grow. But meaning doesn't come from what you get. It comes from what you give, what you build, what you notice. The quiet moment after the noise, that's where real satisfaction hides. When people say nothing feels enough, what they often mean is, I've been living by someone else's definition of enough. Society sells a universal checklist: career, partner, possessions, admiration. But no checklist can account for the unique shape of your soul. If your life feels hollow even after you've done everything right, maybe it's because right was never your word to begin with. So, how do we begin to step off the treadmill? It starts with awareness. Notice the moment your brain whispers, more. Notice the instant you finish something and feel that familiar, faint disappointment. That's not proof you're broken. That's proof you're human. If you can observe that emptiness without rushing to fill it, something remarkable happens. The craving loses its grip. You start to see the pattern instead of becoming it, and in that observation, a tiny bit of peace appears. Fragile at first, but real. The truth is, enough isn't an amount, it's a decision. It's the point where you stop bargaining with reality and start participating in it. When you stop chasing the next thing, you can finally experience the one thing that's always been here, the present. We think fulfillment comes after achievement. In reality, achievement often comes after stillness, because when you're no longer desperate to prove your worth, you finally act from authenticity, not fear. Emptiness doesn't need to be filled, it needs to be understood. It's the silence between notes that gives music its meaning. Without space, there is no sound, only noise. So perhaps the real question isn't, why does nothing ever feel enough? Maybe it's, why do we keep ignoring the moments that already are? Maybe that's where real understanding begins, not in chasing what's missing, but in learning to sit inside the space it leaves behind. Most of us spend years trying to outrun that silence. We drown it in goals, distractions, noise, but the more we resist it, the louder it becomes. Emptiness isn't an enemy, it's a messenger. It tells you that the things you've been feeding your soul with are too light to fill it. If you listen closely, that feeling is brutally honest. It says, you've been chasing symbols instead of experiences. A promotion is a symbol of worth. A like is a symbol of approval. A possession is a symbol of identity. Symbols are easy to collect, but they can't nourish the mind that created them. We confuse recognition with connection, noise with meaning, motion with progress, and in that confusion, the self begins to fracture. You can look successful on the outside while quietly starving on the inside. There's a story of a man who built an empire but couldn't sleep through the night. Every time his head touched the pillow, his mind replayed the same question: what happens if I lose it all? He wasn't addicted to wealth. He was addicted to the fear of losing it. That's what the hunger for enough does. It never lets you rest. Psychologists call this arrival fallacy, the belief that happiness awaits us at some future destination. When I get the job, when I find the right person, when I have enough saved. But each arrival only resets the map. The horizon keeps moving forward, always just out of reach. The paradox is that the people who chase happiness the hardest are often the ones who feel it least, because happiness isn't something you capture, it's something you notice when you stop running. Think about the last truly peaceful moment you had, maybe late at night, alone, when the world finally went quiet. That calm wasn't produced by achievement. It was born from the absence of demand. You weren't trying to be anyone, you simply were. Our culture treats stillness as laziness, yet stillness is the mind's native language. It's the pause between thoughts where clarity lives. When you silence the constant narrative of next, you give your mind permission to remember who you are without all the noise. Of course, stillness is terrifying at first, because the moment everything outside goes quiet, everything inside gets louder. The doubts, the regrets, the fears, they rise like dust in a shaft of light. But if you can sit through that discomfort without running, something starts to shift. the noise settles, and underneath it, you find a different kind of presence, one that doesn't need constant confirmation to exist. That presence is what ancient traditions called contentment, not in the sense of passive acceptance, but of deep alignment. Contentment is knowing you can want things without being owned by the wanting. It's choosing to pursue, but not to depend. Modern psychology echoes this in what's called intrinsic motivation, doing things because they feel meaningful, not because they'll make you look meaningful. When you act from that place, the loop begins to weaken. Dopamine still fires, but it's balanced by something steadier, serotonin, the chemistry of satisfaction. That balance is fragile but real. It appears when effort is tied to purpose, not performance. When you work, because the work itself expands you. When you love, because loving feels right, not because it fills a void. We often think emptiness is the opposite of happiness, but it's closer to the doorway toward it. Emptiness is the pause that lets you see which parts of your life are real and which are just noise. It strips away illusions until what remains is too honest to ignore. The people who seem most at peace aren't those who have everything. They're the ones who stopped bargaining with the idea that everything was necessary. They've learned the subtle art of closing the circle, of saying, this moment is enough for now. That doesn't mean giving up ambition. It means anchoring ambition in awareness. Instead of climbing to escape yourself, you climb to meet yourself at new heights. When you act from that state, even ordinary moments carry weight. Drinking coffee in the morning sun feels complete. Finishing a task brings quiet pride instead of instant hunger. You don't need the universe to applaud. The silence is applause enough. And the silence, strangely, starts to feel full. At some point, everyone reaches a crossroads, a quiet evening when you look at your life and realize you've been chasing shadows. The job, the relationships, the goals, they all gave you a high, a purpose, a reason to keep moving. But beneath them all is the same recurring echo. What now? That question is not failure, it's awakening. The search for enough ends the moment you stop believing there's something missing. And that realization doesn't come with fireworks or enlightenment. It comes like a slow dawn, quiet, patient, undeniable. You start to see that every external thing you chased was just a mirror reflecting the inner state you refused to sit with. The truth is, emptiness was never asking to be filled. It was asking to be understood. Because what we call emptiness is really space, the psychological room we need for meaning to enter. When we pack that space with noise, goals, and distractions, nothing meaningful can breathe. But when we leave it open, when we sit in silence long enough, it transforms. Emptiness becomes possibility. Stillness becomes clarity. The mind resists this because it's addicted to motion. It believes peace is on the other side of effort. But peace isn't something you reach. It's something that's been waiting underneath everything else all along. It's like stirring muddy water. The more you agitate it, the cloudier it gets. If you stop stirring, it slowly clears on its own. That's the mind. That's life. And maybe that's the cruel joke of existence, that we spend our first half of life chasing and the second half learning how to stop. We chase experiences, people, validation, purpose, only to circle back to the same conclusion. We were never supposed to fill the emptiness. We were supposed to feel it, because feeling it means facing yourself. It means looking into the quiet places of your being and asking, what am I really hungry for? Not the applause, not the attention, but the sense of being seen and accepted, first by yourself, then by life. You see, the reason nothing ever feels enough is because enough isn't a quantity. It's a relationship. It's how you relate to your own experience. When you look at life through the lens of what's missing, you'll always find something to fix. But when you look at it through the lens of what's already here, even the smallest thing feels sacred. Gratitude is not a trick, it's a neurological truth. Every time you notice something you already have and let that awareness settle in, your brain rewires its sense of sufficiency. It begins to understand that safety doesn't come from having everything. It comes from realizing you already do. And slowly, imperceptibly, the emptiness starts to soften, not because you've filled it with more things, but because you've stopped trying to escape it. It turns into a companion, a gentle hum instead of a scream, a reminder, not a wound. We think enlightenment is a moment of transcendence, but maybe it's something smaller, quieter. The moment you look at your ordinary life and whisper, "This is enough," not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. The mind will still crave, of course, that's its nature. But when you know the craving doesn't define you, it loses its power. You can watch the wave rise and fall without needing to drown in it. You can let life flow through you instead of trying to hold it still. And that's when something magical happens. The things you once chased start finding their way back to you, not because you demanded them, but because you stopped needing them to make you whole. Peace, meaning fulfillment, they don't arrive when everything is in place. They arrive when you are. Maybe that's what afterlife truly means. Not the place we go when we die, but the state we reach when we finally stop dying for every desire we can't fulfill, when we stop measuring ourselves against illusions and start living from the inside out. The mind is infinite in its hunger, but consciousness, the quiet awareness watching all of it, is already full. And the more you listen to that still voice within, the more you realize it was never emptiness at all. It was peace, waiting to be recognized. So maybe in the end, enough isn't something we find at the top of a mountain or at the end of a journey. Maybe enough is the moment we stop searching for it. When you understand that, you start to live differently. You breathe slower, you speak softer, you listen more, you forgive easier. You stop needing the world to confirm that you exist because you can feel your own existence in every heartbeat. And maybe, just maybe, that's all we were ever looking for. Thank you for listening to Mind After Life. If this story made you pause, reflect, or simply breathe for a moment longer than usual, then maybe, even for a few seconds, it was enough. Until next time, take care of your mind and let life be what it already is.